Dzień dobry Państwu. Myślę, że możemy powoli zaczynać. Witam serdecznie na drugim spotkaniu z cyklu Cyrkularnych Czwartków, naszego cyklu, w którym mówimy przede wszystkim w tym momencie o systemie depozytowo-kaucyjnym, czyli tym rozwiązaniu, na które czekamy z takim wytęsknieniem, można powiedzieć, bo jest to tak naprawdę bardzo skuteczne narzędzie do ograniczenia odpadów i do zawracania surowca, materiałów do obiegu. U nas, jak wiemy, było już kilka wersji ustawy, nadal jest ona niewdrożona, trafiła w tej chwili do rządu, ale nie wiadomo, jakie losy jej będą kolejne i kiedy możemy spodziewać się wdrożenia. Stąd też nasza inicjatywa, gdzie chcemy pokazać najciekawsze, najlepiej funkcjonujące systemy kaucyjne w Europie i porozmawiać z ekspertami, jak można stworzyć najbardziej skuteczny system kaucyjny. Nasz cykl Cyrkularnych Czwartków z patronatem objęła ambasada Holandii i jest też dzisiaj z nami pani Deputy Head of Mission Mette Joranli, której za chwileczkę oddam głos. A dlatego jej obecność, ponieważ będziemy mówić dzisiaj właśnie o systemie kaucyjnym norweskim i dlatego też powitam naszego gościa, pana Kjella Olafa Malduma, który jest CEO and Chairman of Infinitum SA, czyli właśnie operatora norweskiego. So hello Mette and hello Kjell, thank you for joining and have time to spend with us during this webinar. Chciałam również powitać pana posła Andrzeja Grzyba, który także zgodził się dołączyć i powiedzieć ze swojej perspektywy kilka słów na temat tematu związanego z systemem kaucyjnym. Panie pośle, dzień dobry. Także za chwilę też oddam głos panu posłowi. Powiem jeszcze kilka technicznych kwestii. Po pierwsze, mamy tłumaczenie symultaniczne. Na dole Państwo mają taki przycisk tłumaczenie i można sobie zmieniać kanały na angielski, polski. Tam, gdzie jest po polsku, będzie słychać tłumaczenie po polsku. Również chcemy, żeby ta sesja była jak najbardziej interaktywna, dlatego zapraszamy do zadawania pytań na czacie, ponieważ w pierwszej części będzie szczegółowa prezentacja norweskiego systemu kaucyjnego, natomiast w drugiej części będziemy rozmawiać z naszym ekspertem i tutaj jest przestrzeń dla Państwa, żebyście mogli dopytać, dowiedzieć się szczególnie tych rzeczy, które Was bardziej interesują, więc jakby w trakcie samej prezentacji proszę od razu pisać na czacie, ja później będę te pytania zadawać naszemu ekspertowi. So now, Mette, thank you very much again for joining our webinar and to give the patronage to this project. And we cooperating, for many years on this sustainable issue, and we really appreciate your support and try to really strengthen our bilateral relation to make the world greener, I would say. So if you can say a few words from your perspective.
Thank you, Agnieszka, and thank you, Innovo, for making this webinar series. And good afternoon to everyone and to all participants. I see that we are quite many on the screen, which is very good. I'm happy to see that there's so many people engaged in this important topic. Now, today you will be hearing from a Norwegian expert on the Norwegian experiences with circular economy. He will talk to us about environmentally friendly and efficient beverage deposit system in Norway. And I very much appreciate having the opportunity to welcome a Norwegian expert into this webinar. But before we turn to the expert, I would just like to say a few points from us at the Norwegian Embassy on why we place such an importance on the topic of circular economy. As some of you already know, green transition is one of the key priorities of the work of the Embassy, both politically, but also in terms of business promotion. In the work with green transition, we look at several building blocks that will support Norway and Poland alike in building a sustainable green future. And one of these building blocks, we believe, is circular economy. We have several crises looming on the horizon. There is a climate crisis, there is a biodiversity crisis, and there is a consumption crisis. All these crises together make the future not sustainable. And we need to learn how to operate within the boundaries of the planet. Now, luckily for us, there is a common plan. There is a European Green Deal, and there is the Circular Economy Action Plan. These plans are ambitious, and they are quite comprehensive, and they all come with the necessary carrot and stick incentives to make them work. But we need we believe that governments need to implement the regulatory obligations in these plans without delay, and that the rest of the society and businesses need to take full advantage of them. For these plans to work, we need to cooperate, we need partnerships, and we need to be together in this. We believe that there is a great need for cooperation between companies, across sectors, between cities, municipalities, and region, and of course between countries, such as we at the Norwegian Embassy are doing together with Polish partners. This is why I think it's so great to see that there are many people here today. You all represent these partnerships that we're hoping to build. Now, from the Norwegian Embassy in Warsaw side, we have been, as Agnieszka pointed out in the beginning, been engaged in a bilateral cooperation for quite a number of years here in Poland. Last year, we funded the Circularity Gap Report on Poland. This is the first kind of a report that Poland has, and Poland actually did quite well in that report. Poland scored 10.2% in terms of circularity, and when you compare that to the Norwegian percentage, which unfortunately is only 2.4%, I think Poland is doing well in terms of circularity, but you can do better. And the report, just to mention it, was made in cooperation with, amongst other, Agnieszka Snyk and her team at Innovo. Then the embassy, we also engage actively in the Circular Week and the Masovian Congress, which is held every year. We have been a participant for a few number of years. Last year, it was a great success, and we will join this Congress again this year. And we will also bring circularity to the table during our Nordic Day event in April, here in Warsaw, which we will host together with the other Nordic embassies. We will have workshops for Polish cities and municipalities, and we will showcase Norwegian solutions and bringing experts on circularity. And finally, we have great partners here in Poland, specifically with Innovo, and in Norway with Natural State, and with an organization called Reloop. All these organizations together support business initiatives, such as the one that will be presented here today by my Norwegian colleague, Kjell Olav. So I just want to thank everyone for joining this webinar. Best of luck to all of us, I would say, with our common endeavor, which is to make the economy linear to circular. And now I will hand the words over to Kjell Olav Madlum, who will talk to you about environmentally friendly and efficient beverage deposit systems in Norway.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So before we go to our expert, I just give a floor to our member of parliament, Andrzej Grzyb. Panie pośle, pan poseł także był zaangażowany w realizację naszego raportu dotyczącego obliczeń, w jakim stopniu cyrkularna jest polska gospodarka, i zresztą od wielu lat też działa na rzecz zwiększenia zrównoważonego rozwoju w Polsce. Panie pośle, proszę bardzo.
Dziękuję bardzo. Dziękuję pani prezes Agnieszce i dziękuję organizacji Innovo za przede wszystkim podjęcie tego interesującego tematu związanego z cyrkularnością polskiej gospodarki. Natomiast partnerom norweskim serdecznie chcę podziękować za tenże raport i również wszystkie towarzyszące temu działania, żeby ten raport powstał. On jest nad wyraz optymistyczny w stosunku do tego, czego oczekiwaliśmy po tym raporcie. I to było największe zaskoczenie w momencie jego prezentacji. Ale też chcę powiedzieć, że ja akurat mówię z miejsca, które dla państwa jako Norwegów też jest pewnie niezmiernie ważne, ponieważ mówię z Ostrzeszowa, to jest moje rodzinne miasto. I wspomnę tylko jednym zdaniem, że w czasie II wojny światowej w tym moim mieście był największy obóz jeńców, oficerów norweskich. 1200 oficerów norweskich przebywało tutaj w Ostrzeszowie z głównodowodzącym waszej armii, a wśród tych żołnierzy, którzy tutaj przybywali, był również dziadek obecnego sekretarza generalnego NATO, Jensa Stoltenberga. W muzeum tutaj w Ostrzeszowie jest stała ekspozycja, wystawa poświęcona pamięci tegoż bardzo tragicznego czasu II wojny światowej i również pamięci waszych obywateli, którzy, ich potomkowie tu bardzo licznie się z nami kontaktują. To tak gwoli zachęty, żeby może kiedyś ten Ostrzeszów stał się miejscem państwa odwiedzin. Proszę państwa, kwestia systemu kaucyjnego i w ogóle wszystkich przedsięwzięć, które towarzyszą budowaniu gospodarki w obiegu zamkniętym, No, jest przed nami wiele rzeczy do zrobienia. Dlaczego? Dlatego, że akurat ustawa o systemie kaucyjnym, która miała już wejść pod obrady polskiego parlamentu, w dalszym ciągu jeszcze jest na etapie prac rządowych. Decyzja akurat Rady Ministrów o zatwierdzeniu projektu ustawy i przysłaniu go do Sejmu jest przed nami. Ale tak jak powiedziałem, po stronie akurat resortu ochrony środowiska te akurat prace zostały zakończone. Natomiast na poprzednim posiedzeniu uchwaliliśmy zmianę ustawy o odpadach i wtedy i obowiązkach oczywiście przedsiębiorców związanych z tą zmianą. Wtedy też to postulowaliśmy, że ta zmiana ustawy o odpadach i obowiązkach przedsiębiorców, ona wymaga właśnie rozwiązania systemu kaucyjnego. Bez niego że tak powiem, te instrumenty prawne będą niepełne, tak? I niepełne będą też efekty oczekiwane ze strony akurat z jednej strony rządu, z drugiej strony ustawodawcy, no ale przede wszystkim efektów gospodarczych i społecznych. Jest duże społeczne oczekiwanie, żeby wreszcie ten system kaucyjny zaczął w Polsce funkcjonować, ponieważ zdajemy sobie sprawę, że to jest daleko idące marnotrawstwo, brak tego systemu kaucyjnego. On kiedyś w Polsce funkcjonował. Wtedy nie było opakowań oczywiście plastikowych, były głównie opakowania szklane oraz tekturowe. Natomiast w chwili obecnej zdajemy sobie z tego sprawę, że ten obieg materiałów we wtórnym wykorzystaniu, również wykorzystanie recyklatu, to jest coś, czego oczekują również ci, którzy wprowadzają na rynek. Tak? No i kolejna sprawa, przed którą jesteśmy, to jest też wdrożenie ustawy o rozszerzonej odpowiedzialności producentów. To jest kolejny taki etap, który wydaje się być niezmiernie ważny. Ja wczoraj miałem okazję uczestniczyć w takim panelu dyskusyjnym z wszystkimi organizacjami i przedsiębiorcami, które zajmują się zarówno zbiórką, przetwarzaniem, jak i również recyklingiem zużytego sprzętu elektrycznego i elektronicznego. Bardzo interesująca dyskusja, w trakcie której właśnie oczekiwania na te rozwiązania, które tutaj wymieniłem ze strony polskiego ustawodawcy są bardzo duże, łącznie też z oczekiwaniami, które dotyczą między innymi całego systemu rejestracji, który w Polsce jest określony jako baza danych o odpadach, ale tak naprawdę to przecież odpady to są surowce, które są do ponownego wykorzystania, z tym dużym naciskiem na przede wszystkim prewencję, na ekoprojektowanie, na naprawialność, na ponowne użycie i wszystko to, co ma służyć redukcji w tym procesie wprowadzania na rynek. Oczywiście z tym się wiążą również kwestie finansowe. Tyle z mojej strony, ale na koniec chciałem powiedzieć, że kiedy zasygnalizowałem uczestnikom wczorajszej konferencji, że 16 grudnia weszła dyrektywa o raportowaniu przez przedsiębiorstwa w zakresie zrównoważonego rozwoju ESG, to wywołało to bardzo żywe zainteresowanie. Przecież to będzie już nie tak jak w Corporate Social Responsibility, tylko informacja o jakościowych zmianach, ale przede wszystkim tu już będzie ważenie ilościowe, co się zmienia w organizacji, która prowadzi działalność gospodarczą w tym zakresie. Dziękuję bardzo.
Dziękuję bardzo. Bardzo dziękujemy panie pośle, że znalazł pan czas, żeby dołączyć do naszego webinaru i miejmy nadzieję, że system kaucyjny już wkrótce wejdzie, także liczymy też na pana wsparcie. So now Kiel, the floor is all yours. I just have one ask from the interpreters to speak slowly because Polish language is 30% longer than English. So they have to really, squeeze in if they translate it. So please, if you can share your presentation and tell us a little bit more about the deposit scheme system in Norway. Dla Państwa też od razu, tak jak powiedziałam, proszę zadawać pytania, proszę pisać na czacie, jeżeli coś Was zainteresuje, zaintryguje, będziemy w drugiej części je rozwijać i odpowiadać na nie.
Okay, you can see my screen now. can confirm that.
Yes, yes, we can see perfectly.
Okay, my name is Kjell Maldum. I'm Managing Director for Infintum, that's the DRS system in Norway. And thank you a lot for the invitation. This is a topic I really love to talk about, so I will give you a short presentation on how we run and the legislation that's set up in Norway. So Infintum is we like to call it a private-owned value chain company. We own by the producer and retailer 50-50. So I have a board with 66 people, 3 from the producer and 3 from the retailer. And they alter the chairman of the board every second year. The operation started 30 May 1999, but we have had DRS all along. We never shut it down. So Infintum is actually the 3rd DRS system in Norway. Back in time, all producers had their own take-back system, and then they collaborated early in the 90s for refillable, and then they established Infintum to cope with the recyclable packaging. So we had around 1.7 billion cans and PET bottle. That gives 23,000 tons of PET, and we could supply the Norwegian market, producer and importer, with 80% recycled content in all PET bottle every day for the future. And of course, when we increase the deposit rate and the yield in the recycling process, we can increase that even more. We have around 13,000 tons of aluminium cans that's all collected and recycled back to new cans. So it's bottle to bottle and can to can. So we also said that we are running a material pool system for the aluminium and PET. So when the beverage industry use all of our material, it's a reusable system with the lowest environmental impact. Yeah, as a lot of you know, that back in time, almost all countries around the world had a deposit system, but then they shifted from refillable to what they call one-way packaging. I like to call it recyclable packaging because it's very efficient to recycle. But then we have been educating consumer inhabitants to not return empties, and that's what we have to relearn now. That's important, so you can get all this valuable material back into the recycling and reuse process. We have a lot of visitors from around the world. So we see there's some key question we think is important when you are going to look into this problem. Are you concerned about the littering, or is it about the resources? We claim that you should focus on the resources, because then we'll always solve the littering issue. If we set up a system to cope with the littering, then you don't know what to do with the collected material. So we think it's important to think about what's the resources and how we can reuse the resources again and again. And then how can you deliver a product or a service with the lowest environmental impact possible? To achieve that, then you have to look in what's the back to market rate. How to achieve highest environmental effect. That will say how much of the material that you put in the market the first trip can you reuse in the second trip and the third trip and the fourth trip and so on. So how to achieve highest possible collection rate and the yield in the total recycling, collection and recycling process. That's the key figure to see what you can achieve with a mass balance within your circular system. And that gives the 85% that we could supply the Norwegian market today, both for can and PET bottle. And then, of course, as Infintum, we are owned by the producer and retailer. The cost per unit is important for them, but it's also important for the environmental, because we claim if you are cost efficient, you are environmental efficient. So how can you reduce the cost per unit so we run the system efficient? So in Infintum, first we have a strict approval. So all the producers, they have to send a sample of the packaging they want to use. We will check it's the right type of glue, label material, cap material. On the can, we check if they have a sleeve or a label on the can. And then after the check, we give them the approval and said, yes, you are allowed to put a deposit mark, and we will register the product in the reverse vending machine in our master files. Then the producers sell the product through the shops. The consumer empty the bottle and then deliver back the empties to a shop with or without a reverse vending machine. The reverse vending machine, they compact the cans and PET after they have scanned the barcode and the shape, so they register and check that it's approved packaging that's coming into the reverse vending machine. It's compacted into a bag. Then we have the pickup, so we run all the logistics for pickup from all the shops around Norway into logistic hub, into sorting and baling, and then we ship the material back to high-grade recycling, so the material can come a new bottle and a new can. So that's the closed loop, the circular model that we have for cans and PET in Norway. And it's a 100% producer responsibility. So if you buy a PET can, PET beverage on PET or aluminum can, steel can, then all cost for the total operation is included in the product price. It's no additional cost for the society. In Norway, we have a specific setup, and this is maybe most interesting for a politician, but in Norway in the mid-90s, we had some brave politicians say that, okay, if you don't collect anything, you have to pay a very high tax. It's around 35 euro cent per PET bottle or 60 euro cent per can if you don't document your collection. But the more you collect, the lower the cost per unit will be. And if you reach above 95%, as we have done now since 2012, then the environmental cost for the producer is zero. So this gives the industry both the economic incentive to establish the DRS system and to run it cost efficient, because then they save more money and document good environmental performance when they collect all the material and put it back into the market. So that's actually not a mandatory DRS in Norway. We have to compete with other collection systems, but this economic incentive gives the producer the wish to join the DRS system. This is the legislation in Norway for the deposit system. It's actually on one page, and there are a few sentences that's very important. In this chapter, beverage mean beverage in liquid form, including liquid concentrate. This is all that the authority think about. Then it's up to infinitum to include new product, and that's very efficient for the beverage industry that we can look into new products and then allow them into the system. Then it's stated that the environmental department in Norway, they have to approve the take-back system. So even though we have competition, all the competitor system, they have to document how they will run the operation. And then it's stated in this legislation that you need to have a deposit mark if you are going to run a system. And this is also an interesting sentence. Point of sale of beverage in packaging that's included in the deposit and return scheme have a duty to accept a reasonable quantity of empty packaging for product themselves. And when packaging is returned to a point of sale, the consumer may claim a cash refund and deposit. This gives also the retailer a responsibility for a be part of the value chain and actually responsible for collaborate with the producer to make efficient system. And our experience in Norway is that this is actually a very good sentence in the law, saying that the retailer and producer have to collaborate, because are we going to solve the environmental issue and the lack of resources that you don't manage to collect, then it's much more efficient when you can collaborate and make the system efficient, because the producer, they will compete on their own product, but it's not interesting to compete about the packaging material. That should be collected and make available for the producer to reuse time after time. So I think this is interesting. It's a very short, to the point legislation. And that gives the opportunity in Norway. So we have to compete with the green dot, the municipality systems. You are actually allowed to put a PET bottle into the Norwegian market, sell it to the consumer without deposit. But most producers, they want to be part of the deposit system, since we document much higher deposit rate and yield in the recycling process. So it's more costly for the producer to be part of the municipality waste handling system. But the advantage with this model is that we are allowed to say no to a product if it is not in accordance with our design for recycling. The same is that you can sell a can in Norway without the deposit, but then you have to pay an environmental tax, because the curbside system document lower collection rate overall than the deposit system. And that's obvious, since you have an economic incentive to reward the consumer when you have a deposit system. And then we also had a refillable system until 2015, but then was shut down because it's much more costly and it's not environmentally efficient. So in Norway, all the producers decided that they want to shift it from glass bottle to cans and from refillable PET to recyclable PET bottle. So that's the situation for a system in Norway for the time being. And that's interesting when we look upon EU discussion and the new PPWR directive. Some of the logistics and production, this has to do with the collection rate. How can we get material back? of course, first of all, is the retailer. They want to have an efficient reverse vending machine in the shop, and their experience in Norway is that if you have a functional reverse vending machine, you will attract the consumer to your shop, and that's an important competitive advantage. So everyone selling product, even a small corner shop with no reverse vending machine, they want to be part of the system and are obliged to be part of the system based on Norwegian legislation. But then the consumer, when they come to the shop have a efficient, functional take-back for the empties. And then our responsibility is to pick up the bags from the shop. So this is the main product that we have to run regarding logistics. We pick up a bag with a barcode. So 94–95% of what we collect from the markets is collected through 3,700 grocery stores with the reverse vending machine. So here the cans and PET bottle are registered on the barcode, the shape compacted in the bag, and we will pick up the bag. It's around 2 million bags annually, and in average is 1.8 bags per shop per day. Of course, this will vary because if you have a big shop, then you have higher volume, but then you also have more efficient reverse vending machine. So it's not a lot to do with the handling. It's very efficient if you have a reverse vending machine, even if you have big or small volume. And then, since the legislation in Norway stated that you are obliged to take back if you are selling product, so then also all corner shops, gasoline station, tourist huts up in the mountain, out on the islands, volunteer organization, soccer team, football team, and school band, everyone that have an arrangement, they are supplying or selling beverage, they are obliged to take back. They put empties in a small bag because they don't afford to have a reverse vending machine. They put it in the bag, we will pick up the bag and take it into our plant and register it to an industrial reverse vending machine. And then we have the same solution for e-commerce, because based on Norwegian legislation, if you are selling and deliver at the doorstep, the selling point is actually the doorstep. And then you are obliged to take back the empties. We pick it up from the logistics hub for the e-commerce into our plant, and we will count the number of units in the bag. All the bag I use have a unique barcode, so we know where it's picked up, and then we send the data to the e-commerce company, or we get the data, so we pay out the money to the small shops. If you have a big shop with a reverse vending machine, then we pay out based on the registration in the reverse vending machine. The logistics setup in Norway is that 80% inhabitants in Norway are living south of Norway. So we have a main plant here, just outside Oslo, the capital of Norway. And then we have a smaller plant in mid of Norway, up north of Norway. Since we are obliged to pick up from every outlet, every arrangement that's run around in Norway, we need to have this set up. So we take the material in, sort, bale, and ship it to the recycling. So it's all about running efficient logistics and get the material back. And we focus to get the material back as quick as possible. And that's also important regarding the shops, because they don't want to store a huge amount of empties in plastic bags. So we like to get the volume and run with a high frequency when we pick up from the shop. So if, for instance, if you are a small corner shop and you have 1 bag per week, we will visit you once a week on a fixed appointment and pick up a bag. And then we get the material back into the loop for reuse, and we pay out the money to the small shop and the big shops. We also have solution for on the go. So this is more a voluntary setup. If the school, university, and also they have decided they want a hut bag. So, and this is on the backside of the reverse vending machine. So if you have a big reverse vending machine, we have made a solution for a type of vacuum system. So we suck the material just out from the compactor, and then it's run into a hook lift container. So a shop with big volume, then we will have a hook lift container outside the store. If you have a hypermarket, for instance, this is a more feasible solution. But this also proves that you can continue to develop and increase the efficiency in the logistics. So we are coping with small shops, 1 bag per week, up to big shops with a hook lift container per week. Since we have the logistics, we also develop solution for the beverage producers. So we have set up a deposit solution for beer kegs, 20-liter beer kegs that Ringnes use. We set up a solution for festival cups. This is recyclable PET cups. It's very efficient to collect, recycle, and reuse the material into new cups. We have a wine monopoly in Norway. It's a state-owned shop system for wine and spirit. They want all the wine producers to use PET instead of glass, since it's much more environmentally efficient. And then we have a competitor solution for beer kegs from Polykeg and Keykeg, and we have set up a deposit system for that as well. We take all this material into the plant, separate, bale, and ship it to recycling. This is our argument for claiming that we are running a reusable system, because the material we take in, if it's a Pepsi bottle, it could become a Coke bottle and a new bottle and a new product, but it's the same material in a much more efficient way than a reusable with different shapes and different brands and all the complexity for a reusable system. So we say that this is an efficient system, and we are working with a life cycle assessment now to document the effect between running a refillable all-time or a refillable modern system. This is just an example to remind everyone that's been running refillable. This is the production hall, and then you see the area for store all the refillable during the seasonality is the same as the production halls. So it's a very demanding system. This is Infinitum's product. After we collect from the market, we sort and bale into aluminium, clear bottle, and colored bottle, and that's sold to the recycler. Just some key figures also, because I talk about back to market rate. So we document and go public with all the data for what we collect. So then it's the sales in the market. And then you have what's collected, and we like to call that the deposit rate. What's actually been registered on the barcode and shape in the reverse vending machine. And then we also document the total collection rate, because we find most of the empties that not deposit as actually in the household garbage. So some people still at home manage to put the empties in the household garbage instead of putting into the reverse vending machine. So then we document the total collection rate. And this is what we report to the authority, and this is the main task for Infinitum, to document what the beverage industry in Norway achieve regarding collection of empties every year. And this is also stated in our public annual report. When you run a DRS and you would like to have a high yield in the recycling process, design for recycling, of course, is very important as well. And then you need to focus on the glue label and the PET material itself. That's a good quality material, so we can reuse again and again and again. This is the setup for the material and cash flow. So in Infinitum, we run a system for all of Norway. The producer, they become members of Infinitum. It's cost them around 1,000 euro, and that's a one-time cost. Then they are a member for eternity. They report the sales for the previous month within day 7. Then we invoice, and they have to pay the deposit for the sales and the EPR cost for the previous month within day 12. They sell to the wholesaler, distributor, to the shop, to the consumer. Consumer deliver back the empties. And then we register the empties in the reverse vending machine, industrial or in the shop, and pay out the deposit and the handling fee to the shop every 14 days. We run the pickup into our plant for sorting and baling. The material go to the recycler. We get the income from the recycling, and the packaging material is back in the loop for the next trip. Deposit value in Norway is around 20 euro cent for the bottle up to half liter, and 3 euro cent for the bottle above half liter. This was was adjusted in 2018. This is the EPR cost. This is what the producer have to pay Infinitum for us to cover all of the operation and pay out the handling fee to the shop and so on. We actually pay the shop, the producer, for every can they put into the system. Then the producer have to pay for every clear bottle. If you have a light blue bottle, then it's base plus light blue. If it's a colored, it's base plus colored. If you have a RPET value above 80%, you have to pay additional cost. Or if the quality of the material is outside the limits, then you have to pay additional cost. This is to give the incentive to the industry to choose the most efficient material, so we know that we can recycle with a high yield and good quality, so we can reuse the material many, many times. The unredeemed deposit and the material income retained in Infinitum, and there is no VAT on the deposit nor on the unredeemed deposit. So this is a simple and efficient solution, and this is what's the decision from the tax authority and the authority in Norway. And we think this is a good model because it makes the system efficient and cost efficient. This is just a comparison. So if we look into the total cost for Infinitum per kilogram of PET converted into bottle, and then we reach 92% plus, and we have 80% recycled content, then you see that in a lot of other European countries, the cost is actually higher with a lower collection rate and much lower yield in the recycling process. So you pay less for a more efficient system. So back in time, there was a lot of discussion about costly DRS system, but we can document that's not very costly when you run it in an efficient way. This is the handling fee for the shop, if you have a reverse vending machine or not. I'm sending the presentation so you can look into the details later on. Just give us a few slides about the efficiency. This is a comparison between different packaging material. This is in gram per liter sold product, 675 if you run with a glass bottle, lightweight glass bottle, PET bottle incinerated outside DRS, aluminium, pouches, Tetra Paks, bag-in-box 3 liter, or a PET bottle in the deposit system with 90% deposit rate and 80% recycled content. So then you see that the PET is by far the most efficient packaging material, as long as it's collected and recycled in an efficient way. And no of this material should stay in the nature. So the aim is to get everything that we put on the market back into the market again and reuse everything. We have done several LCA studies. This is from 2017, documenting what's happening when you start to use recycled content. We are updating this now because we have increased efficiency in our system. So that will be finalized end of April, start of May this year. And in that report, we will also do calculation for a re-establishment of a full-size refillable system, all-time refillable system in Norway. So we can document the difference between the two differences, the modern reusable system and the all-time reusable system. Yeah. This is also to compare, because when we did the LCA study, we did it in collaboration with the Green Dot system that's towards the municipality. And then you see that the transport efficiency is much higher when you run a DR system compared to collect the empties in the household garbage. It's only 50% of the CO2 emission, even though we include the reverse vending machine as part of the logistic system. And this is, we often get a question about how many trips can you run the PET material. If you run with 20% virgin and 80% recycled, then you have a mathematical number of 5 trips for the material. But in reality, the molecules from the first bottle, you can find after 45, 50 trips because you delete the material and reuse it again and again many times. And that's interesting with the PET. It's a very good quality molecules that you can re-establish and have the same mechanical strength at the many, many trips. This is a comparison that we've done together with the Norwegian wine monopoly to see the CO2 emission per 1,000 liter of beverage for glass, bag-in-box, and so on. This is another setup as the graph I showed earlier. Yeah, and just show this as well because this is in Norway, and the biggest source for microplastic is actually a wear of tires. And if you run with heavy glass bottle, then you know that this will increase. So we also said that efficient and lightweight packaging material is important. So this is some example from greenwashing when the tire producer stated that they are environmental friendly because they are putting PET bottle into the tires. I think that's the biggest example of greenwashing. And now EU have also stated that the clothing industry should stop claiming recyclability when they use PET bottle into the clothes, because they also said that beyond the risk of misleading consumer, such a practice is not in line with the circular model for PET bottle, which are fit for being kept in the closed loop recycling system for food contact material. So that was a brief presentation of the Infinitum, how we run the operation with the shops, the RVM in the shop, how we pick up the bags from the shop into the plant, sorting, baling, and focus on the design for recycling before we allow the product into the system. So we know that we can recycle all of the material that's collected into new bottle and new cans. So, thank you so far.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. We have few questions on the chat, so I will start to read them through. So one of the question is, I wonder if the introduction of the DRS was necessary. The system generates new cost, creates a new organization, operator, etc. I don't know how to waste collection was organized before the introduction of the system in Norway, but was there selective waste collection by municipalities? Wasn't it enough to develop the current system and do not introduce additional system and deposit, of course, and cost of the manufacturer? Have other options for selective PET collection been considered? No, kind of tricky question.
Yeah. It's an interesting question. So I think because we have had the DRS system in Norway all along, we never shut down the system. So then we have had the DRS system for 100 years, but it has been developed since Infinitum was started up in 1999. And then you have to do investment in the reverse vending machine and so on. But the cost for a producer, it's not high because we cover all the costs. When we started up Infinitum, the cost for establishing or startup was 500,000 euro in 1999. And we pay back that investment to the producer and retailer within the first 2 years of operation. And we cover all the costs for the shops and so on. In addition, we see that in Norway, I was just thinking to get the slide here. The municipality, they support the DRS system fully because they know that the actual cost for collection a bottle or a can through a municipality waste handling system costs more than the actual income from the sales of the material. So if you look into the overall cost for the collection for the municipality, the volume is very high and the value of the material when you commingle or have a separate system but without the compaction in a reverse vending machine, the cost is actually higher. So I think in Norway, you can ask whatever municipality, all of them are very pleased. And you also see in the bigger city, the littering from beverage packaging with deposit is next to nothing. And that's important because that's also a cost for the municipality. That's not in Norway since we have the DRS and the inhabitants are very good at delivering back all the empties to the system. But I think for the beverage industry, as I showed on the one slide, the cost is lower for them, the EPR cost in the deposit system compared to the green dot system around Europe. So you pay less for a much more efficient system regarding collection and recycling compared to the municipality waste system. So that's one slide should speak for itself because it's actually lower cost per unit.
So, you know, when we're talking about the cost, there's a question, can you tell us more about the cost in DRS? How does the handling fee between participants work?
Yeah, so we pay out the handling fee to the shop and that covers the investment of the reverse vending machine, the use of the area, the buying of the bag and the workforce. So that's the 4 cost element and we cover all of that. So we have done 2 bigger studies in Norway together with the producer and retailer, agree on the cost level and we do a yearly adjustment. But still we see that we pay, the producer have a much lower cost overall and the cost for what we pay to the handling is higher than we invoice the producer. So if I share the screen, I can show a few slides, if that's okay.
It's okay, it's perfect.
So as I showed here, this is the cost. So for the producer, for a PET bottle, they pay 0.14 Norwegian krone. You have to divide in 10, then it's euro approximately. That's the cost for the producer overall. And then when we compare that to other countries, Austria, Belgium, and so on, I send the presentation so you can go into detail, but then you see that the cost for 1 kilogram of PET is 3.78. And then you see in other countries, you have actually a higher cost for the municipality wasting. And remember, this is the total cost in the DRS system. When you look into the municipality waste handling system, you have 2 costs and you only show one. You show the cost for the green dot, not the cost that the municipality invoiced inhabitants. So the cost is actually much higher for the collection of the plastic but lower collection yield and especially much lower yield for the recycling. So it's not costly to have a DRS system. And then this is what we pay to the shop. So you remember for a clear PET bottle is 0.14. That's the cost for the producer for letting Infintum take responsible for the collection and everything. And this is what we pay for the PET bottle when it's going through a reverse vending machine. So this is to cover the 4 cost element that the shop has. So we cover all the operational costs, the investment and everything.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next question is about, wait a second, because I just lost it. Does the vacuum system for collecting packaging in large stores not reduce the purity and quality of materials? The packaging seems to be collected outdoors and exposed to weather.
There is no reduction in the quality. Actually, it's a better quality on the material. But this picture I showed, that was out without the roof. So normally there is a roof on the hook lift container. So it's just going through a small roof, plastic roof. So then you have not an issue with humidity and so on. And that's important because we are selling in tonnage and we have a quality check from the recycler. So for us, it's very important to keep the humidity out. And in Norway, we have a lot of that. It's a lot of rain and snow, so important. But the picture was just to show that we run it directly into a hook lift container. And we only have that for 10, 15 shops. We don't have that much. We don't have hypermarket in Norway, but we have some big supermarket. So I reckon in Poland, you will have a much more supermarket and hypermarket. And then it's just to show that you can run. It's very efficient because the setup here is easy to put into a building since it's only a small tube and this engine for the vacuum system. And then the material go directly into the container. And as you also maybe saw in the picture, we call mingle can and PET. That gives the system much more efficiency regarding logistics, and then we sort the material in the plant, our own plant.
Thank you. So what impact had the introduction of DRS on the market? Have you noticed any changes in consumer choices? Were there any bankruptcies or other problems of small producers?
No bankruptcies regarding the deposit system, that's for sure. And there is not big shifts because when you look into the EPR cost, it's not that big difference. Of course, there is some difference between can and PET, but we see that the shift over the years is more related to the preference for the consumer. So, for instance, beer is sold in cans in Norway. Almost all beers is sold in can. We have small volume on glass bottle and then premium beer on glass bottle. That's a stable small volume, but then most of it is sold in cans. Back in time, it was only soft drinks on PET bottle. Now we see that the consumer prefer more of the soft drink on cans, and then the producer will shift to cans. But there's no impact since the deposit value is the same for can or PET. It's only the size, not the material that depend on the deposit. So it's no big difference there. And we saw also when we did the shift in 2015 from refillable glass bottle, all the conversion was going directly from refillable glass bottle to cans, and there was no complaints and no big issue for the producer. And even small craft beer producer are now able to buy small efficient production line to fill cans with beer as well.
So I also maybe ask about these small retailers, because this is, I think, big concern in Poland. Yes, they are really afraid to join this deposit scheme system, that they don't have enough space for that. So I see that it works pretty well, yes, in Norway. Could you kind of confirm? Or?
Yeah, and I just have to put on the picture again. So to remind, because that's a common question we got from all the visitors we have. And then it's two-sided. First of all, we see that all the small shops, they would like to be part of the system because a lot of the small shops, they know the local neighbors. It's the same guys coming into the small corner shop. This is a good service and everyone is concerned in the environment. So they will do it because it's efficient. It's good for the environment. And we see, I think in Lithuania, when they started, they had an exemption for small shops, but then the small shops asked to be part of it because if you can't take deposit, then the consumer have to go to the big shop to deposit, then you lose your sale. So for instance, in Norway, the retailers say there's two things that always has to be in the shop: a functional reverse vending machine and shopping bags. If you go out for shopping bag, the consumer will go to a competitor. If the reverse vending machine stop, they will take the empties and go to a competitor and deposit and use the money in their shop. So that's the two most important part. And as I stated here, we will have a focus on the frequency. So if you're a small corner shop, maybe you have 1 bag per week, we will visit you every second day. So we know that it's never more than 2 bags. And this volume is much smaller than the volume you have for the incoming goods into your shop. And we see even gasoline station and all other, they find efficient solution for this. So it's all about logistics, pick it up when it's 1 bag, and we pay out the money as soon as possible. So after 2 weeks, on the average is 1 week between you pay out to the consumer, the customer in your shop, until you get the deposit back. So we claim, and you can ask whoever small shop in Norway, they are part of this, and they say that this is important for the efficiency and the good service for the customer.
Thank you. There is kind of one comment, I would say, that the PET quality is lower in every cycle because of oligomers are released. When it is used in bottles, in many cycles, bottles are simply not safe and for health. What about you? What about it? What about it? What is your perspective? Any comments?
That's an interesting topic, because that's why we now have set a limit for maximum 80% recycled content. Then we have a lot of study and scientists that see that then you can run the material again and again in a very efficient, and you stabilize the quality. You won't increase the particles accumulated in the PET. It will flatten out after 1 to 2 trips. And when you run with the right type of crystallinity in the PET bottle, it's the same good quality after the first trip as after the 5th trip. But that's important. So that's why we have adjusted our material specification. So we do now have a control. And the reason is that we see a lot of PETs coming into the bottle collected from market without DRS system. Then you know that you have more contamination and more residue from other products into the PET that you don't manage to get rid of in the extrusion process, even though it's a super clean recycling process. It's all depend on the quality in. So when you have good control of blue label, it's going through a reverse vending machine, no contamination during the collection process, then you keep the good quality on the material. And we have a lot of documentation, so those interested can take contact and we can update them on this knowledge.
The next question is, the system in Norway is voluntary. I understand that there is no fixed value of the deposit by the legislators. How is the amount of the deposit determined? Have the producers agree with each other in this regard?
Well, the deposit value is actually stated. The minimum deposit value is stated in the law. And I support that. Back in time, I argued that the producers should agree on this, but that's not possible, as I think the people in question. So this is stated that it should be 20 cents for the bottle up to ½ liter and 30 cents for the bigger bottle. That's in the regulation. But it's also said that infinitum, we can put on higher deposit level if we see that we're struggling with some product, because there's a big difference for the deposit rate on the product based on who's the consumer and where it's consumed. So we are allowed to put on higher. So we have that discussion now if we should do that on some specific product. But the baseline is defined in the legislation, and it should stay like that.
Okay. So next question, what is the accessibility solution for rPET in Norway? Who owns the waste?
It's not waste, it's valuable material. But infinitum, we own the material because the producer, they trust us and pay us to take care of the material. So when the consumer deliver back the empties in the shop, they get their deposit back. Then we take over the ownership for the PET and the cans. We run it through our system, and then we sell it to the recycler. For instance, Veolia and Wellman, that's the 2 recyclers we used. In the agreement with Veolia, we have stated that they have to give the offer of first refusal to all the Norwegian producer and importer. And we also set up a system so they divide the tonnage to all the Norwegian producers, so they get their fair share. So all producers in Norway, they can get 80% recycled content back in their bottle based on Norwegian high quality PET material.
Thank you. So I think one of the last questions, who is the founder of this recyclomat, these collecting machines, and is now you only collect from the municipalities the waste, mixed waste, or you still like sorted it on different fraction in the municipality from the citizens' houses?
No, so what we document, we collect more than 92% through the reverse vending machine. That's the bottle with the deposit. But then, as I documented, we see that some people, they throw the empties in the household garbage. That's better than throwing in the nature, but still we should like to have it into the reverse vending machine. But that volume is taken care of for the municipality. We get the information from the municipality and put that into our reporting. And this is a collaboration between the municipality and Infinitum. But that material is not possible to run back to food grade quality material. Aluminium, you can do that, but not the PET. You can do it on the PET, but the yield in the recycling process then will be very low. Then you are talking about yield on 30 to 50% maybe, instead of 95% in yield in the recycling process.
Thank you. The next question is, what is the reason for difference DRS fee for packaging up to 0.5 liters and above this capacity?
Now the deposit value, that's different. Yeah. And the reason is historical, because back in time you had refillable bottle, and then I think when they started the system for refillable, then they look into the price for buying refillables or the cost for the producer to buy refillable. So that's just follow us. So if you go to Sweden and Denmark, they have also two deposit value, but there's a difference. There's have the difference on 0.7 liter instead of 0.5 liter. So that's just a historical issue. So we already have that discussion. Maybe we should just increase on the small one, but make the same on the big bottles, because the deposit rate on big bottles is always higher since the main volume is consumed at home. But for the small bottle, you have a higher portion consumed on the go, and then you have a lower deposit rate. So it's a historical reason that we have 20 cent and 30 cent, but we see a lot of market have that difference. But Germany, they have one deposit value for recyclable packaging, so you can have different solutions.
So I think that we just ran out of time. Thank you very much, Kiel, for your time. I maybe would like to ask Pan Poseł Grzyb, if you can maybe close our webinar and maybe say a few words as a closing session. Ja może też od razu Państwa zaproszę na kolejne webinary. 27 kwietnia będziemy mówić o fińskim systemie depozytowym, natomiast 18 maja o słowackim, czyli takim nam najbliższym, który został niedawno wprowadzony, więc myślę, że to też może być bardzo ciekawa rozmowa. Panie pośle, nie wiem, czy zechciał Pan jedno, dwa zdania jeszcze na zakończenie dodać?
Dziękuję bardzo. Przede wszystkim chciałem podziękować panu Kielu Moldanowi za bardzo ciekawą prezentację, ale przede wszystkim to jest funkcjonujący system, który ma ponad 100-letnią tradycję. Więc ta tradycja też tutaj jest elementem takiego przyzwyczajenia klientów, którzy chcą, mówię o konsumentach, którzy chcą korzystać z tego systemu. I on jest korzystny z jednej strony, jak pan powiedział, dla konsumentów, bo oni bardzo chętnie pozbywają się tychże opakowań. No, 93% trafiających opakowań przez recyklomaty to jest rewelacyjny wynik. A z drugiej strony jest to opłacalne również dla firm, które prowadzą tę działalność, tak jak pan powiedział, ze względów podatkowych. I sądzę, że tutaj chyba tkwi sukces całego tego przedsięwzięcia i tego systemu norweskiego. Ja bardzo serdecznie dziękuję za tą wielką porcję wiedzy. Bardzo interesujące pytania padły w trakcie dyskusji. No i oczywiście głównemu organizatorowi, czyli Instytutowi Innowo i pani prezes Agnieszce Sznyk za zaproszenie. Dziękuję bardzo.
Bardzo dziękuję. And Kiel, I understand that you will share your presentation, yes? That you share your presentation with us and we can send it to participants, yeah? So thank you very much. Dziękuję Państwu bardzo. No i mam nadzieję do zobaczenia za miesiąc na kolejnym cyklu z naszych cyrkularnych czwartków, gdzie będziemy mówić o Finlandii. Do widzenia.